The attendance has been taken. Can I have approval of the agenda? Moved by
So moved.
So moved, Judy.
Second it,
Moved by
Bob.
Judy. Moved by Judy, second by Bob Powell. Anything on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 My opinion, the motion's carried. Conflict of interest disclosure? Being none. The adoption of the minutes of the September 9th, 2021.
So moved, Judy.
Seconded, Ian.
Moved by Judy, seconded by Ian. Anything on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the October 28th, 2021 minutes, moved by
So moved, Ian.
Ian Kitchen, second by Stephen Sharp. Anything on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The adoption of the minutes of November 2nd, 2021, moved by
Judy.
Judy. Seconded by
Peter.
seconded by Peter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now we have a public presentation by Silvermark. Don, would you introduce them, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Several weeks ago, Silvermark reached out to me, and I'll leave it to them to explain to you what they do. But they're involved in a successful transportation initiative in the southeast part of New Brunswick about getting people to medical appointments, getting into town, and I was interested in what they were doing. I was also interested in them speaking to the board, because I had heard rumors that the local government reform in the white paper might task us with some type of transportation responsibility, and that turned out to be the case. So I think it's very timely. I want to introduce Amy Foreman, and who is the CEO of Silvermark, and she has a presentation for us, and she's prepared to take your questions, and I think you'll find it interesting. So having said that, Amy, Jana, and April, it's up to you folks.
Thank you so much, Don. It's a great pleasure to be here with all of you this evening. It was lovely of you to invite us here this evening, Don, to present to all of you. And we're looking forward to, I'm going to introduce to you my colleagues that are joining the call as well. So my name is April McAllister. I'm the Director of Relationships and Impact with Silvermark. And joining me on the call this evening is May Foreman, the CEO and founder of Silvermark, but she was the project lead on the regional transportation project that we're going to share with you about this evening. And Jana Jones, if you can give a wave or a hello to put a face to your name. She was the sector lead throughout the project. And then also joining us this evening is Suzanne White, who is a Community Inclusion Network Coordinator within the region. And she was our client representative as we worked on this project. So May, if you're able to bring the presentation up on screen, that would be great. And we're going to share more with you about the stakeholders and how everyone connects to each other in a few moments as we get into the project overview. But we are really pleased to be here to share with you about the regional transportation plan for the capital region. And so what we're going to do is we're going to share with you a couple of our meeting objectives for our presentation. And then Jana and May are going to provide a project overview, and then we'll have some discussion time. So our main objectives for our time together this evening are to provide you with a project overview, including success factors for the regional transportation plan. And then we also want to share content regarding how the initiative relates to the local governance reform that we've recently heard about. And so now I'm going to hand it over to Jana and May to share with you the project overview.
Thank you, April. Hi, everyone. I'm Jana. Thank you for allowing us to join your meeting tonight. And I'm excited to share with you a little bit about Silvermark and how and why Silvermark was brought onto this project. So April, if you could, actually, maybe it's May that has the slide deck going there. So to begin, I just would like to paint a picture for you of the project stakeholders and explain how the partnership between Silvermark and the other stakeholders came to be. So Silvermark's work on the project was initiated by the Economic and Social Inclusion Corporation, otherwise known as ESIC. And we were brought on board for our expertise and guidance in shaping a transportation solution for vulnerable populations in the capital region. ESIC has funded our work, and they have committed ongoing funding for the transportation service you'll be hearing a little bit more about during this presentation. And ESIC operates through 12 community inclusion networks, otherwise known as CINs, across the province. And coordination of the community inclusion network in our region falls to Greater Fredericton Social Innovation. Our main contact at GFSI, or Greater Fredericton Social Innovation, is Suzanne White, as April mentioned, and we've developed a wonderful working relationship with Suzanne and her colleagues throughout the course of this project, and we're really looking forward to sharing with you all the solution that we've come up with together as a team. So therefore, ESIC and Silvermark have been brought together by the Community Inclusion Network and the Greater Fredericton Social Innovation. So that sort of lets you all know how we came to be. So really the main goal for this project was to solve the problem for the highest need. And ESIC approached us to solve that ongoing problem of transportation for the highest number of individuals that it affects. And our research has shown that older adults make up the greatest number of individuals who are lacking equitable transportation in this region. We determined it was about 80% of individuals who are seeking transportation on a regular basis are older adults. So solving this problem initially for that group, for older adults, those with the highest need, translates into a solution for vulnerable populations as a whole. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with a number of successful programs that rely heavily on volunteers. And as you'll hear more about in the upcoming slides, the transportation solution that we've implemented also relies on volunteers. And many of those volunteers themselves are older adults who want to remain involved and give back to their community. So not only are we solving a transportation issue, we're bringing that solution back to community. And we believe that a strong community focus equals a more heavily invested group of volunteers and a successful program. So a little bit more about Silvermark. Our work with clients involves really three key steps. And the number one being, we identify the real challenges that our clients face as they serve older adults. We aim to bring the greatest success possible to our clients. We build roadmaps to identify what the right solutions and conditions are to help them solve the challenges that they have identified. And as our work with clients progresses, we often experience breakthrough moments, light bulb moments along the way that build on the initial goals that were originally set out. So clients often come to us with specific goals in mind, and at the project closeout, they may find that we have helped them uncover or reach other goals that they didn't even realize they had at the beginning. So we really do put just as much emphasis on our process as we do our outcomes. And we found that the greatest impact in solving problems for older adults is through the process we go through as a team and with our client. And we really do view our client as part of our team as well on every project. So just to re-ground everyone and ground ourselves in what this challenge is, the problem statement here is very simple, and that is that there is no equitable community transportation solution available in the capital region. So that's the crux of the matter here that we've been working on, and I look forward to passing you over to May, and looking forward to hearing what she has to say further on what the outcome is of our project.
Thank you for teeing things up, Jana, and appreciate April, the introductions, and just appreciate Dawn and company, everyone inviting us into this conversation today. Definitely see some familiar faces and some new faces. So just a pleasure to spend a little bit of time to you tonight to talk about really what's been, to Jana's point, a long-standing issue within the capital region in terms of having this type of service available. So I'm going to hit a few high points on our approach and then move towards that discussion that April indicated that we would have tonight. So first and foremost, just to give some clarity on project scope, as many of you are probably aware, when you're looking at sort of program development or initiating something new, there are certain stages to go through. And really, this is just to highlight that Silvermark was engaged to activate existing knowledge. We have a lot of existing knowledge in the space of transportation, both within the province and outside. So really looking at the evidence and having that guide our direction from the onset. Also then figuring out the stakeholder engagement, the different audiences that would be part of that problem and also part of the solution. And then figuring out how that could be disseminated. How could that essentially be formed to a call to action? That's where our scope concluded. And now we're moving into the earliest stages of implementation. And we're excited to tell you kind of where things are and where they're headed. So in terms of methods, I know there's a lot of detail in this slide, and I also know you have them in advance. So I'm not going to read the slide verbatim, just to pick up on three kind of main themes, both in our approach on the methods and then also in our learnings, is what I'd like to highlight. So as I just mentioned, one of the big aspects of this project was to activate existing knowledge. As I referenced, there's lots of research, there are other best practice models, there are precedents for us to look to. We looked inside the jurisdiction and outside. Some of you might be familiar with the body of work of Dr. Trevor Hansen at UNB. I'm sure some of you have crossed paths. So having conversations with Trevor and looking at his body of work was really where we started in this one, in this particular project. Really to ensure that we were drawing upon and leveraging, investments in time, energy, learnings, and experience that were already available to us. The second was accessing sector-specific expertise. So Jana referenced that we decided at the onset as a project team, including with Suzanne and her colleagues, to approach this problem from the lens of the older adulthood, because most of the riders are older adults, and the almost nearly 100% in other best practice models, you'll find the volunteer drivers are older adults. So that meant we chose to lean into the age-friendly communities. We're fortunate in this region to have 3 age-friendly certified communities today, and I'm sure that number will continue to grow with Fredericton or Oromocto in New Maryland. And so we certainly spoke to many folks in communities, but we had a particular focus on really connecting with folks who are already servicing the space and have an understanding of the needs in their communities from the older adult lens. And the last was applying a strategic approach. And so as I referenced, we looked at best practice models, we looked what was working, what wasn't working, and looked at the resources we have within our own communities. And really we're trying to assemble all of this into the right call to action. I think that's ultimately what we knew was going to be forthcoming, but we didn't know who the call to action would be to, what exactly would that call to action be? And that's the strategic lens we sort of took all the way through from the beginning of the project through to the end. On the learning side, just a few key points here to highlight for you. The first is that the solution around community-based transportation is more than a drive. We use this reference often during the project, that although we're talking about getting someone from point A to point B, we're talking about all sorts of other social implications around that. And again, both for the riders and for the passengers. When you think about all the isolation that we've certainly come to have a better appreciation of even through the pandemic, and understanding how that impacts some of our community members, even the ability to volunteer or contribute this way from a driver's perspective, it reflects certainly more than a drive for them. The second is to employ a micro focus. So this was a particularly important, and you'll see it's really relevant as we initiate implementation and then we move to scale and sustain a community transportation program. As much as ESIC in particular from a provincial lens, they want a regional solution, and that's what we were asked to develop. you get to a regional solution by stitching things together, community. So on a very micro focus. And so that's the path that we have taken, and is the path that we'll continue to follow. And the last, of course, is that municipal leadership has a role in this type of solution. And so we're going to talk about what that can look like. But by all means, it was really important, even from the standpoint of validating, promoting, just being a supporter of this type of initiative. And recognizing, particularly for those who are familiar or are already certified in age friendly, that it is alignment with community priorities around transportation, social inclusion, and civic engagement. So in moving to the solution, I'm really pleased to say that when we looked at the solution, we were able to really break it down into 3 manageable pieces, if you will. And so really the function of this project became much more about connecting these 3, or bringing the dots together, if you will, in order to get to the point of implementation. So the first is that to have this type of community-based transportation, you need a provider. You need someone who has the operational leadership to handle coordination and dispatch and volunteer training, and to manage the risk associated with a program, with liability insurance, and to kind of understand what's involved in operating a program like this. And so we look to leverage existing knowledge and systems as opposed to creating it anew. We did do a scan out into communities, but it became very apparent that finding someone who had this operational leadership experience would be key to moving the solution ahead swiftly. The second is you need funders. You definitely need a mechanism for sustainable funding. Other precedents would indicate that funding comes both at municipal and provincial levels. We were very fortunate from the onset with Suzanne and the team at ESIC that there is a commitment there to provide some annualized funding towards community-based transportation. So we knew we had a baseline to work with. And so that was great in terms of being able to really focus on the third piece, which was community. And so when you looked at community, we knew quite quickly that that's where we would have to source our volunteer drivers at a community by community level, and to be really clear on what the call to action was out into community. And what that looked like was identifying a community champion and asking for them to find 8 volunteer drivers. That's what was determined in sort of building out what a program could look like, that you need a minimum of 8 volunteer drivers in order to provide that service as a start, not a final basis, but as a start. So in breaking down those key elements, we are now moving to implementation because we were able to garner support and commitment in each of those 8 areas. So to share with you the solution today and how stakeholders are mobilizing, the first is that we were able to secure the partnership or engagement of Urban Rural Rides as a provider. So Urban Rural Rides, if you're not familiar, is an existing provider in the Greater Moncton region. They are actually have come together through an amalgamation of 3 smaller providers over a more than a cumulative decade of service. Today, they service more than 10,000 drives per year. So even that alone sort of illustrates the level of expertise and operational capacity and understanding that they have. And so it was wonderful to be able to get to the point of inviting them into our region, if you will, and leveraging their existing knowledge, skills, and some initial capacities that they have to support this growth. The second was the funders. So as I mentioned, ESIC, we knew, had a commitment from the get-go, which is wonderful, and just as they have contributed in other regions. The model does provide for clients to provide payment if they are so able. So Urban Rural Rides also was able to provide that financial model that sees clients contributing where they can. In their case, it also reimburses volunteers. And so we said, let's continue with a model on the financial side that has been shown to work. And the umbrella agreement with departments of social development and the departments of health are agreements that ESIC is trying to negotiate just to sort of unify the approach to providing financial support for those who are Department of Social Development clients. So that's underway, not finalized. And then we knew there would be municipalities who were coming on board. There was not a financial ask to get started, but we certainly would hope to see some path towards municipal support over the longer term. Now we know with the white paper, there's a mandate there at the Regional Service Commission level. And so we have a precedent even in the Greater Moncton region with the RSC contributing there. But we were fortunate. There was enough capacity and enough support from ESIC that we were not having to go and make a financial ask to get started. And then community. So we talked to those age-friendly communities in particular. I'm really pleased, and I see some of our mayor and council representing these communities of Oromocto, New Maryland, and Cambridge Narrows. These were the first communities that stepped forward and said, we're willing to engage in the next steps. So Oromocto in particular, I think I saw Mayor Powell there. I see you there lower on my screen, Mayor. So we had a community champion in Oromocto out of the gates with Helen Ledusser. She came to the first meeting. She's already found 6 of her volunteer drivers. So, 2 more, and we're going to be off to the races in Oromocto. So that's very exciting to see us make a specific call to action and then have community respond so swiftly, and to be able to really cover off the questions that largely related to the operation side by inviting an expert into our community and region. New Maryland, I know I just had a touch point with Mayor Judy, and there's a willingness to kind of look in and examine and understand what role the village can play in this endeavor. And also we had some community champions step forward in Cambridge Narrows. So just great to see things mobilized in really what was kind of a 4 to 5 month period on an issue that's been a decade long and a gap to be filled. That's certainly, and you probably already understand the need quite well from your own community perspectives. So I think the last couple of pieces here is to just really reinforce for you that the solution is well within reach. Even though there's a lot of dialogue about community transportation and that gap that we've experienced in our communities for many, many years, it really is almost right in front of us. And it was as much about putting the pieces together as anything else. And so the real timeline is that the community champions, those communities that are engaging in the next steps, the call to action was, please find 8 volunteer drivers. That gives us enough to get started to offer clients services for in your region. And so everyone is kind of working hard to do that over this last quarter of the year. Urban Rural Rides will provide training for those volunteer drivers in the first quarter of the new year. We'll look to those community leaders such as yourselves and certainly GFSI and the age-friendly communities to help promote the service and identify potential passengers early in the new year as well. And the expectation is to begin seeing drives in this region, in the capital region, as late as April 2022 and as early as even February 2022, because Helen has her drivers ready in Oromocto. And so really, it's quite exciting to see that mobilization so swiftly, and obviously for something that is a deep need. So we always like to pause and just really take a second to reflect on the impact. And as I had shared here earlier, this impact really is about more than a drive. It is about transportation as a means for social inclusion. And we could list civic engagement, and we could list contributing to the health requirements and not missing doctor's appointments and those kinds of things. So it is definitely a layered impact. Which again, the project team affectionately sort of refers to as more than a drive. So moving towards the discussion, I'd like to just hit a couple of high points for you in terms of context and what does this mean for RSC 11 and your respective communities and yourselves as a collection and board. So looking ahead, quite timely, and we do appreciate the invite from Dawn on the heels of the white paper being released on local governance reform. And of course, we all did see that community transportation appears to be going to become one of your mandates in 2023. And so seeing that definitely dovetails nicely with this, the work that we're sharing with you today. It also highlights in the white paper and encourages intercommission collaboration. We mentioned before the Greater Moncton region. The Southeast Regional Service Commission has been really integral in the growth of urban rural rides in that region, both from a standpoint of just being a connector and champion, and also because they have moved to contributing to sustainable funding. And so it'll be interesting to explore that as mandates shape on local reform. And they're certainly a resource that we shared a little bit with Dawn, and one that we would encourage you to take a look at. I think the other 2 points that are really important to note is the solutions already in place. We don't really have to figure out how to solve for community transportation. We've got a precedent that's working in other regions. We've got now a precedent in our region that's being mobilized. And so the focus then can be placed on sustaining and scaling, which should be exciting for us, where we're all still feeling gaps in our respective communities. And so lastly, we'll just leave you with the notion of how to get involved, or what this would mean for you from today forward. And it's not coming to you with a big call to action or a big ask. This really, as we set out at the beginning of the meeting, April referenced, a lot of this is just sharing and being able to let you know what's happening in the region, and now to something that's highly relevant, even in local governance reform and in our health reform. So we would ask that you support promotion in the participating communities as your communities come on board. It is very helpful to have municipal leadership support a program. It validates it out to the community. And we want to make sure we reach those people that you folks are representing and that are in need. And so very helpful if you can help promote. And the second is to refer a community champion from your community if you identify one. And so there's not a direct call to action for that tonight. But if you're already talking about this topic in your community, if someone approaches you and you think they would be a great connector and could find those volunteer drivers, please feel welcome to refer them into us, and we'll put them in touch with the right folks who are delivering the service. There's no need to wait, but there's also no pressure, because we do have some initial communities. We wanted to get to kind of 3 to get things started, and we're excited that we were able to get there in the scope. So I'll turn it back to you, April, please.
Thank you, Jana and Amay, for providing such a wonderful overview of the Regional Transportation Plan. Now we'd like to give all of you an opportunity to engage and ask questions or provide comments and feedback. Anything at all that you'd like to ask, we'd be happy to have a discussion with you.
I see Mayor Wilson-Shea, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I've got 2 questions. May, you mentioned liability insurance. Who provides the liability insurance?
Yeah, so the provider, Urban Rural Rides, carries the general liability insurance for the operation. Each volunteer driver is required to have $2 million of liability coverage for themselves. In some cases, there's a recognition that means increasing. Many people still carry only $1 million of liability, but there is a financial offering if it's needed. If someone's premium is going to go up as a volunteer driver, that can be provided and offset by Urban Rural Rides. So generally speaking, the risk organizationally sits with the provider, but drivers still remain responsible for their own responsible driving, much akin to any other organization that is supported by volunteer drivers like Meals on Wheels or Salvation Army and things in the past.
Thank you. And my second question, I know for now, and you've stressed it, that there's grant money available, so it's not going to cost the municipalities or the other areas to participate. But is there the chance down the road that those funds could dry up and then municipalities would be asked to cost share this program?
Yeah, I think the context, and we shared this with those who we met with in community, including the age-friendly advisory group in New Maryland, Mayor, is that it's not about one or the other. I think it really is about supporting long-term sustainability and growth. And so I know that core funding is been a commitment made by ESIC, and it's what they contribute in other regions. But as I mentioned, in the Southeast region, the Regional Service Commission has decided as a collective to also provide some sustainable annualized funding. So there will be a moment in time where that discussion should be tabled, and I would hope that can be brought back to this board. But it's not an ask today. It's not a capacity that's needed to be able to get started in offering the service.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Emmy,
Yes, please.
it's Peter Morrison. I just have a question for you. Your presentation has been pretty much focused on municipalities. And I live in what is currently called an LSD.
Mhm.
And where the population tends to be less dense, greater dispersed. And in the case of the LSD that I represent, the general average would be that we'd be a little bit older than maybe in municipal areas. So how are you planning to address that?
Yeah, so great question. And we did choose to focus from a municipal lens, particularly because of those age-friendly certified communities. And we knew we had a link through those committees that would likely support our calls to action. And so that was really much more of a strategic approach than a singular approach to growing a program. Our scope is finished at this point in time. And so now it's about seeing how this mobilizes in these initial communities and determining what the readiness is in the other LSDs and municipalities. So really the secret sauce, if you will, was getting to 8 volunteer drivers. So in a particular region, an LSD included, if you had a community champion that was willing to secure those 8 volunteer drivers, Urban Rural Rides is willing to train those drivers and start to promote that service. So it's not reliant from a municipal standpoint, it's really reliant from a community standpoint. Is there somebody who was willing to play that role of community champion? We, in this scope, we're not sort of blanketing the ask to everyone in the region. We took a targeted approach, but by all means, there's no barrier for your community to engage at any moment in time.
Okay, thank
The
you.
only barrier is that participation from community.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Mr. Morrison, I see your hand up.
Yes, it's Dave Morrison here from Hanwell. This is sounds like a great idea. We've been kicking it around the council table now for quite some time, but never really come to fruition on how we were ever going to get it started. So what I'm looking for is a name and a contact number.
Yeah, actually, that's a slide or two ahead. It's in the slide deck, both April and my contact information. So if you have the slide deck, it should be there. And if not, we'll make sure we pop that up onto the screen here in a moment. But
Okay.
You can reach out to any of us. We're aware that Hamwell has been talking about that conversation. So it's great to just hear your eagerness to potentially connect. That's wonderful.
Super. Okay.
I'd like to jump in at this point to say I'm really excited about your interest because I will be there tomorrow night to give you and council a presentation of the details about the volunteer program. Yeah,
Excellent.
so
Super.
that's,
Look forward
yeah,
to it.
I've been talking with Tim.
Perfect.
Leo, I see your hand up.
Yes, my question, of course, we're in a small LSD. You're looking for 8 drivers. I was curious, who supplies the vehicles for these things? And I personally, right now, do drive a van for York Manor, which I do transportation, but all my drives are for residents there, but a lot of that is by the government. So will social development be picking the people that will receive these rides? That's my idea.
Yeah, so I hear two questions. One is about the vehicles and the second is about the eligibility to use the service. So in terms of the vehicles, volunteer drivers, and we do have volunteer driver profiles so that volunteers can understand exactly what's required. And it includes having an appropriate vehicle to drive. So you need to have a clean driving record. You need to have a background check. You need to have a vehicle that's safe and able to be on the road, and it needs to be insured. So the vehicles are personal vehicles. In terms of eligibility, the eligibility is actually, it's for anybody who needs it. So the majority of those people certainly end up including those who are clients of Department of Social Development, but it is not a service dictated by social development. It is one that is supported financially through that umbrella agreement that we mentioned for social development. It's one that has a sliding scale for payment for those passengers who can pay and those who are not able. But really, the service is promoted out into community, and those passengers who need a ride are welcome to call to arrange that ride.
Great, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Any further questions?
No, I don't think I see any other questions. So maybe April, if you just want to wrap us up, that would be great.
Sure, thank you, MA. Just want to do a final check-in with everyone. Dawn, I know that you had invited us to come and present tonight, so I wanted to make sure that everyone got what they needed from the presentation, and to just do a final check-in with you, Dawn, before we're complete for this evening.
Yeah, thank you very much. Later this evening, we'll be talking about local government reform in a more general way, and we'll be referring back to this. I will make sure I do have the slide deck, and I have the contact information, April, for you and for MA, and I'll make sure that that goes out separately right after the meeting, so people don't have to fumble through their package. And thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure seeing all of your faces and having the opportunity to share with you this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, the rest of your team. It was really interesting, and hopefully we'll pick up on all the communities and local service districts in the area. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your evening and a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, we're moving to committee reports, policing committee. Mayor Wilson Shi.
Thank you, Your Worship. The committee met on November 22nd, 2021. In attendance were Erica Barnett, the Vice Chair, Leo Colleen, David Morrison, Peter Morrison, Don Fitzgerald, ex officio, Kelly Shaw, Board Secretary, and myself as Chair. I called the meeting to order at 10 a.m. The meeting began with a discussion on the advisory forum meeting of November the 4th. It's worth noting that the quality of reporting and enforcement has improved over the past several months, although there are still areas for improvement. In line with this topic, the advisory forum will be having their annual priority setting session with the RCMP in February. This committee would appreciate hearing from the directors as to their preferred priorities for the coming year. The ED was also tasked to find out about response times and how calls were prioritized. There are a few significant points to highlight for the board from the RCMP presentation to the advisory forum. There is new legislation coming in 2022 with respect to cameras being used as evidence. This includes the use of red light cameras, cameras on school buses, etc. An additional 26 investigators have been assigned to the Safer Communities Unit throughout the province, and the RCMP is working on a new campaign for crime reporting. This campaign will promote the use of Crime Stoppers as well. The committee also discussed policing costs throughout the province, which is summarized in the attached staff report. The ED will be arranging a presentation to the committee from the Department of Public Safety on how costs are calculated. Finally, the committee talked about local government reform and the impact this will have on the committee structure and mandate. This will be a focal point for the committee in 2022. The meeting adjourned at 10:27 a.m. I move that the board receive the report of the Community Policing Committee dated December 7th, 2021.
You heard the motion. Do I have a seconder?
Second by Erica Barnett.
Seconded by Eric Barnett. Anything on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Finance Committee. Director Morrison. Please.
Okay, the Finance Committee met on November 25th, 2021. In attendance were myself, Greg Erickson, Stephen Sharp, Derek Pleadwell, David Duplessis, Ian Kitchen, Jan Fitzgerald, Lonnie Forbes, and Brett McRae. The meeting was called to order by the chair at 3:30 p.m. and considered the attached staff report concerning expense reimbursement for staff and directors. During the consideration of the report and while discussing the mechanics of adoption, the committee directed staff to include a process that would annually adjust rates to reflect inflation so that we are not faced with falling behind or creating a recurring need to adjust the policy each year. Staff added the highlighted section in the draft policy attached to this report to reflect this direction. There being no further business, the meeting was adjourned at 3:43 p.m. Motion one, I move that the board receive the report of the Finance Committee dated December 7th, 2021.
David, I'll second it.
Seconded by David Duplessis. Anything on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Second motion.
I move that Appendix C of the procedural bylaw be repealed and replaced with policy FIN-03, which is also attached to this report.
Second, Judy.
Second by Judy. Anything on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
Moving on to staff report, local government reform white paper, Don.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this evening, I want to talk to you about local government reform and as it relates to regional service commissions. And you'll recall that recently, not that long ago, the white paper was introduced, and on December the 1st, the legislation was introduced to the House, and I understand that we are going to see that passed on the 17th of December. So local government reform is focused on 4 areas that we'll see on the next slide. And it talks about structure, and you're all familiar with that. It's been probably the lead story in the media. That's about where we draw lines on maps and create new municipal entities and rural districts and merge. And there's been a lot talked about it. And I'm not going to talk about that tonight because I'm focused on the impact for the Service Commission. And that's really on that coin that says collaboration. So that'll be our focus tonight. But there's also significant change introduced in the area of planning, and that's land use planning. And there are modest changes to finances at this point in time, and a more robust series of financial changes promised once structures are changed and there's a different, I guess, underpinning. So these changes will take impact on the 1st of January, 2023. And so we have a year to get ready. So in regional collaboration, there are a number of broad services that have been added to the mandate of the Regional Service Commission. And they include economic development, community development, regional tourism, regional transportation, and that's one of the things that we talked about with Silvermark. And that means moving people. It's not about building bridges or exits. Regional infrastructure, some social issues, and public safety. And I will talk about each of those in a little bit of detail and let you know what I know at this point in time. And then I'll finish by talking about how we get to that new world where this is part of the mandate of the Regional Service Commission. So the first one that we mentioned was economic development. And so it is the wish of the province that economic development be addressed at a regional level, and that integrated strategies are used, and we see less community competition. And so I don't know how that's going to work out. In parts of the province, there are no agencies addressing economic development other than Opportunities New Brunswick, which is looking at it at a macro level. And then in the three large areas, Moncton, St. John, and Fredericton, there are organizations that are doing that. But it's very clear that there's going to be a legislative responsibility for regional service commissions. And so somehow we have to make all of that work in an efficient, non-duplicating way. Already, Opportunities New Brunswick has reached out to all of the executive directors with respect to what are you doing around economic development, and what do you think should happen. I've had conversations with Ignite, who are they're in the process of trying to arrange significant funding through post-secondary education, training, and labor. And they're obviously anxious about what impact this will have on them. And they're one of a large group of people that have called me in the last week thinking that I know a lot more than they've heard in the newspaper, and that I have influence to change things. And neither of those are true. But we're all sort of feeling our way along. Community development is going to be another area that will be the responsibility of the Regional Service Commission. And that's something new. That's affordable housing, newcomer settlement, diversity promotion, and social inclusion. And we heard earlier about ESEC, the Economic and Social Inclusion Corporation. They've reached out to all of the executive directors. We had a Teams meeting with them, and they are quite anxious to work with us. They want to make sure that they flow their funding through to us because they recognize that we will have a mandate for service delivery. I think they still see themselves as having some type of management over what the service delivery looks like. But they have people who work in the Community Inclusion Network. Suzanne White was in our meeting earlier, and I believe that she works for the Community Inclusion Network. Ideally, they'd like those people to be housed inside the Service Commission, and they'll continue to pay them. So, so they've already, they have quite mature thinking about how they might interact with regional service commissions. And then there's regional tourism. And the idea there is that they want to ensure, and the province wants to ensure, that there's coordinated regional promotion of tourism. And that all partners that are active in that area now work together in a cooperative and collaborative manner that makes things grow. And it's one of the areas in the white paper where they specifically mentioned that this is going to probably look different from commission to commission. But one of the things that I feel comfortable in stating is that we have a lot of product in this region, and I'm sure that we can work more efficiently together to identify where those are and promote them together. And if it's okay, Mr. Chair, rather than run through 7 or 8 things, I'll stop now and sort of take any questions that directors might have on those 3 new areas of responsibility.
Isn't this just another level of government? Like, we already had direct connection to all that to begin with, by now adding the Regional Service Commission as another entity to deal with. Another just another level.
So there's been a lot of discussion of positioning the regional service commissions as not another level of government. And I think what people are concerned about there is taxing authorities. Will regional service commissions tax people? And the total financial reinvention has not been disclosed yet, so I don't really know how that's going to work. I do think that the Regional Service Commission is obviously going to be much more involved in the service delivery game. I know there are people that aren't keen on regional service commissions, so you read their opinions in the paper, but it's pretty clear to me that the white paper and indeed the legislation says that the regional service commissions aren't going away, and in fact they're going to get broader, and they're going to have an expanded work. So that's all I can say to that.
I get direct connection to Suzanne and Larry and Planet Hatch and all those people right now. So there isn't not a third person. By now adding yourself and staff, third person, and to me, that's not reducing on what we should be doing. It's adding more to your guys' plate and table and staff that are already overworked to deal with issues that you don't have the expertise to deal with, right? Like, it doesn't make sense to add economic development to the plate of regional service commissions when we're already dealing with UNB and Planet Hatch and the people that deal with it on a daily level, right? But
so there are people who will have that opinion. I mean, all I'm doing is I'm presenting what's in the legislation and what's in the white paper, and it's in my position, debating or suggesting that it shouldn't be this and it should be that. That's not my area of expertise. I'm an implementer. So this is the task that's been given to us, and I'm going to implement it.
Mayor Pleadwell.
Thank you. Any idea the financial baseline that might be required of the RCs to tackle some of these pillars, just to start? Or is there a baseline to study what needs to be done in these areas that's funded to get started and then carried forward to figure out what it would take to implement?
Right. So I think what I'll do now is show my flexibility and go to my last slide. And because I had structured the presentation to talk about, what needed to happen and finish with how. And yeah, go ahead, Kelly, right to the end. And maybe we won't have to circle back, but maybe we're stuck there. However, what the last slide says is that starting in January 2022, the province is going to hire 12 transition leaders to work with each regional service commission to prepare them for January of the following year, when they will be responsible for these areas. And that individual, supported by environment and local government and the other departments in the province, will show us the way. They'll get us ready for our mandate, new mandate. They'll talk about the Public Safety Committee that I'm going to talk about it a little later, and our governance. And during next year, that individual will hire a chief executive officer to run the Regional Service Commission, to drive that change management process, and to develop a regional strategy. So Director Bleedwell, the answer to your question is I don't know, but someone's going to come and help us go through that. The budget for the Regional Service Commission is going to look quite a bit different because there's going to be many more areas of responsibility. And what I would say about that, based on my 20 years in local government, is that there's enough money in the system to do everything. Where it's allocated right now, it's not all in one place. It's a little bit here and a little bit there. And if we're to do this in a way that eliminates duplication, we're going to have to maximize the funding that's already in place. And but my crystal ball is honestly no better than yours. So I'm a lot of the details will come when the regulations are introduced, and I don't think that we'll see them in the first quarter of 2022.
You're not expecting any financial hits coming into this, the cost borne by the transition facilitator and all those functions will be covered elsewhere outside of RSC budgets.
Right, so I haven't heard that for sure, but I have to assume that that's the case. This government has invested significant political capital in these reforms, and they need it to work. And they have mentioned that they have money and resources to help make sure that it works. And so I suspect that my suspicion, and I think it's well-founded, is that all of this will be paid for by environment and local government.
Perfect.
Ian, you had a question?
I guess just a comment. I know during my mandate here in Ackwick that we've really stressed economic development. We have a corporation for economic development, and tourism has come out of that, a regional tourism committee. So I guess when these things go forth, do you think there's going to be sub-regions within our region, or is it going to be an all for one?
That's a terrific question. Our region is actually going to grow. The village of Harvey is going to be part of our region, and the local service district of Manor Sutton, which is a fair landmass. And before those areas were added, like today, our region is larger than Prince Edward Island. So I do think that some services will have to be looked at in a sub-regional manner. Some services will be able to be delivered broadly, but our communities are unique, even restructured, the way they're contemplated being restructured. They're unique, and so I don't think we should discount that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Then I'll jump in perhaps on my next slide, which lists 3 more services. And I'm apologizing to publicly to Kelly right now. And but I thank her for her support. So regional transportation is an area that's going to be part of our new mandate. And as I mentioned, that's about moving people. And one of the things that Silvermark was talking about today was getting people, mostly older adults, many of whom have lost the ability to drive or lost their driver's license, the ability to get to their pharmacy or their doctor or even just the mall or the grocery store. That really supports what we're hearing in healthcare right now with respect to people aging in place and trying to keep them out of our institutions. I forget the number that I read in the paper today, or I think on the CBC website, but a disproportionate number of the people who got COVID in our province got COVID in nursing homes and care facilities. So the more that we can keep people in their own homes, the lower, it's been demonstrated that their health is better, their mental health is better, our communities are better off. And so it's nice that someone is being tasked with that. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but I do know that there's a big need out there. The next is recreation infrastructure. The province is going to, if you read the white paper carefully, I think they're finally going to say, this is how we share costs. There's been many different models presented at many different times. Some of them look on population, some of them look at tax base and blend the two of them together. And it seems we have to reinvent the wheel every time we look at a project. And it appears that not only is the province going to let us know what we're to use in that regard, I think we're going to see some definition of regional recreation infrastructure, which will be helpful. And it's an area that the province has struggled with for years. Adjacent communities asking for the same arena, the same soccer field, and it looks like finally they're going to provide some standards in that regard. And then in the large three, and so it impacts us, the Regional Service Commission is going to have a mandate for social issues. And these aren't the social issues I talked about before. These are the big ones. This is homelessness, poverty reduction. And the root causes of homelessness and poverty reduction and poverty, they're very complex, and it's a multi-pronged approach that needs to be taken. The homelessness is like stormwater. It doesn't respect municipal borders or local service district borders. Things happen to people and they unfortunately find themselves homeless or caught in generational poverty. It's an area I know about only by reading. It's not an area that I've been active in my life before, but it's a big one. And so at this point, there's no real direction about how our approach to that will happen, but we're going to tackle that on a regional basis. And so that's another 3 services. I think it's a good place, Mr. Chair, to stop and see what other questions there might be with respect to any of those.
Right? You have a question?
I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Don, thanks for the presentation on this, and I do appreciate you coming to it piece at a time. Although I guess the question I have relates to all of it. The regulations you said are going to be due in the spring. Are we going to have plenty of time to look over those prior to them being finalized? Because there's so many complexities involved in all of these things. I don't want to stir the pot too much because I know what lies beneath. But we're going to have to schedule an epic number of meetings to sort through a lot of this stuff.
Right. So I don't think I have good news. So the legislation that exists today provides for a 30-day period for comments once regulations are published. If the government is going to meet their timeline of this being in effect in January of 2023, I don't think they have a lot of time to negotiate, amend regulations. I think that it's time now for municipal associations and stakeholders, now that the legislation has been introduced, to express their preferences with respect to what the regulations are going to be, because they're writing them now. And I think this is the window. Speaking from experience, we got caught with the provincial waste management strategy was issued just during the election period, the municipal election period in May. And we tried really hard to get that 30-day period extended, all regional service commissions, and to no avail. So not optimistic that that'll be the case. I do think this is the time to make our representations. And, you know, I think back 9 years to the implementation of the regional service commissions. That government of the day said, we're going here. And they went. And I think we'll see the same kind of thing here with local government reform. But again, prefacing that with, you know, my crystal ball. I don't have all of the inside info I have, I'm delivering tonight. So it's, as you can see, it's not a lot.
I appreciate your candor, though. Thank you very much.
Bob, you have a question? You're on mute, Bob.
How's that? Don, does mental health fall into these social issues too?
Sorry, does what?
The mental health.
It isn't specifically referenced. And in fact, the social issue is not really specifically referenced, but I don't know how you separate that.
Exactly.
And I want to say that when I was at university, I took one sociology course in the humanities and got a D and got out of there. So, you know, it's not an area where I'm any kind of authority, but based on my observation, almost always mental health is a contributing factor. And look, it's a really complicated world that we live in today. It's a tough world to grow up in. It's an overly medicated, you know, it's, Bob, I think it's got to be part of it.
No, definitely. Yeah, exactly.
Dave Morrison?
They're on mute here.
No, you're okay. No, you're on mute. You're on mute, Dave.
Okay, there, I'm off mute, I think. Yep. All I have to add is I can see RSC 11 taking on so much more, a whole lot more, and I certainly sympathize with Don trying to get this all together. One thing I'd suggest is you start looking for bigger offices.
Well, you know, that has occurred to me. I don't know, but I need the help of a transition leader to sort of understand what we're going to need, and if it's all going to have to be centralized in one location, or there's a lot. 2022 is going to be a time of significant change or preparation for significant change.
Yeah, I don't know where they're going to get all these transition leaders, because they're talking about a dozen for the RSCs and numerous transition leaders for the municipalities and the LSDs coming together. It's going to be certainly be a popular job in the coming years or months.
They have put in place the overall, the leaders of the transition leaders. And so it was announced at the Francophone Association's conference, pardon me, last Friday night. The executive director of the Southeast Regional Service Commission, Gerard Bellevaux, is one of those individuals. And Lisa Olette, who I believe is a prof in Montreal, is the other. And so they've already started. I'm sure they have candidates or folks that they're looking for. They need to put them in place quick, because the change to regional service commissions is significant. The formation of new communities is equally significant, and is happening in many areas in our region. So it's you know, if you're comfortable with the status quo, 2022 is probably not going to be your best year.
You got that right.
No other questions?
Okay, so we can jump back into approaching the end mercifully. So, up one. So one of the things that we're going to have to do from the Regional Service Commission, at the Regional Service Commission, is develop a public safety committee. And we're actually a little bit down the road with that, because our advisory forum that we have now has recently gotten participation out of the Department of Public Safety. So it's starting to evolve. But this public safety committee that we will have to form will include emergency measures. It will include policing. It will include public safety and fire. So, and it will be the area that we deal with our regional public safety concerns. And I think it's part of a long game in terms of looking at better integration of those services. It provides us, we'll see a change in our region. We have an advisory forum now. I see that disappearing. And the reason for that is that we're going from 45,000 people who live in unincorporated areas and 29 local service districts, each one who wants to have something to say with respect to public safety. But that's not going to be the case post-reform. Post-reform, our unincorporated areas are going to have a population of about 13,000, and they're going to have a rural, and they will be one rural district with elected people. So we'll be able to populate our public safety committee with people who have been elected and have a direct connection to the people that they represent. In year 2, the Regional Service Commission is going to have to develop a strategy, a regional strategy addressing all of these service areas and identify goals. And so that's not going to be an easy job. And what tumbles out of that in the following year is service reporting. So right now, we don't have standard reporting for our service commissions or even our municipalities. And I know, for example, in Nova Scotia, they have a common scorecard, and municipalities there, you know, they get a red box or a green box, and you can compare whether they're operating efficiently. And so we're going to live in a world like that in the future, and that probably be coming in 2024. So it was at this point that I was then going to say, this is what the province wants regional service commissions to become. And then I was going to say how we get there. I was going to talk about the transition leader, and I was going to talk about the CEO. So as soon as I know anything about that, you know, I'll make sure that the board is aware. The transition leader, my advice to the board is, let's take an active part in the transition leader's work. Let's not have something done to us. Let's be an active participant in this change. I think that we'll be better off if we do that. There will be areas that don't embrace this change, and they'll miss opportunities. I've given this presentation. This is the third time I've given this presentation. I gave it to the staff of the Service Commission Monday. Gave it to them Monday, and one of the things I observed for them is this is tremendous opportunity coming in terms of a place to work and a variety of things to do. I gave it at a municipality's strategic session this morning, and you know, I tried to let my message there was change is coming, and a change is coming. I don't think we can stop it. So my advice to the board is, you know, let's jump in and direct that change as effectively as we can for our region, which is by statute going to be renamed as the Capital Region Service Commission. So we're going to be part of the Capital Region, and so that's who we'll be going forward.
Are there any more questions for Dawn? No questions. Thank you, Don. That was a good report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Resolutions, Mike Chamberlain, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that pursuant to section 5.2
Yeah,
of the
let me
regional cert.
get some counselors on. And
Sorry,
my fault, sir.
Sorry, Mike.
okay, I'll start again. Be it resolved that pursuant to section 5.2 of the Regional Service Commission 11 procedural bylaw, that the meetings of the Board of Directors for 2022 will be as follows: February 1st, March 1st, April 5th, May 3rd, June 7th, Thursday, September 8th, October 4th, November 1st, and December 6th.
Motion, is there a second, please?
Bob Powell, second it.
Second by Bob Powell. Anything on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 10, closed session. One item pursuant to 68(1) of the New Brunswick Local Governments Act, B, personal information is defined in the Right to Information Protection of Privacy Act. Do we go to closed session?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed, I believe that we did have some counselors on, at least for the Silvermark presentation. So I'm going to ask Kelly to confirm that there's only staff and board members in now. Thank you. And apologies to Councilor Scammell. And yeah, Mr. Chair, I believe that a director is going to declare conflict.
As I'm going to remove you from the meeting.
And that'll deal with that. And